Hey guys, Brunel here. We are back from Ag Days and we had a lot of traffic coming by the booth. New farmers that we don't normally talk to that wanted to pick our brain on how we diagnose different problems in fields. So I thought I'd put together a bit of a framework of the thought process that we put behind it, especially during the off season, so that we can start to have those conversations with the farmers. Because if this is a problem that, fields often have corners or areas that are lower producing, so it's always a curiosity to figure out why that is. If you can solve that for a grower as an agronomist, you win their confidence, you win their business, they trust you, and it's those big problems that they're paying you the big bucks to solve. So especially during the off season, without further ado, here's the kind of the framework that we use to go through it. So first of all, we have to identify what is the problem. So how much lower yielding is this area? Does it only show up in some or all crops? Because different crops, soil textures, fertility, weather can all affect crops differently. Is it something that's repeatable that shows up every year? If it's every year, we have to look at history or what's going on. If it's just a recent problem that they noticed this year, well, that's where we can maybe look at it and say, okay, is this more of a drift or a production related problem? Was there something that happened at the time of seeding or in crop, et cetera, et cetera? So next step is to identify how many acres are affected. So usually it's a significant amount of the acres. To do this, we can go to yield maps if the farmer has them, or satellite imagery. You can see an example here of a field. There's 5 years of satellite imagery, and they're showing repeatable patterns. So the lower part of the field was the part of the field that the farmer is concerned about why it's lower producing. Well, it shows up in 2025. It shows up kind of in every year, but especially 2020, 2025. So were these similar crops, similar weather conditions, etc. Regardless, it's something that we can now quantify to say, okay, there's X number of these acres. This is how bad they're affected. If we have the yield maps, we know what the difference is in yield. Otherwise, if we're just basing it off satellite imagery, we can't say if it's 5 or if it's 10 bushels. But this is all part of quantifying what exactly we're dealing with here and trying to solve. Next thing to consider is what is the field history. So when I talk history, the last 100 some years that we've been farming it, has this field been separated into smaller paddocks at one time where they had different owners, different rotations, possibly different fertility practices? You would need to consider old yard sites, any fence rows, or any old paddocks. So when we look at these patterns, there's these straight lines, there's definitely some man-made patterns, not only separating the poor area to the south, but even in the top half, there's some lines in there that are kind of curious and have me wondering if this wasn't a management issue. So that line separating the north from the south is the half-mile line. So chances are that there were different owners, that it was farmed differently. I'm gonna guess that this is either a fertility or an erosion related issue. Maybe it was summer followed one year, or maybe it was farmed by somebody that wasn't adequately fertilizing it and mined it out. These are all things that we can consider. So how do we find that out? Well, we talk to local or retired farmers. Often the farmer may not have a clue as to the history of the field because they've always farmed it that way for the last 20, 30 years. But dad or granddad might walk in and look at this picture and start picking it apart to say, this piece was farmed by so-and-so, this was a piece we bought then, this one blew really bad in the 30s, etc., etc. So it's important to tap into that local resource if you have it. If you don't have it, the Manitoba has an air photo library. It's part of the Manitoba Conservation. You can look it up, but there you can have a search done on air photos that go back to the 60s, 50s, a little bit in the 40s, and a little bit in areas in the 30s. But those images are priceless for showing you where the old paddocks were, where the fence rows were, the pastures, etc. You can see on this particular piece, there's 3 cutouts. So there's 3 yard sites on this piece. Well, there still is to this day, but probably 3 different farms at the time, if not more. So these are all important sources. Satellite imagery can also be a source. We can go back almost 30 years to the late 90s with satellite imagery in a lot of data bases. So those two can help tell the tale of what's happened in the last 30 some years. Next thing that I like to look at is what is the lay of the land. So are there anything with water? Is there anything with topography that may affect how this field performs? We can do that if the farmer has RTK, but then we can also look at it with LiDAR imagery. So looking at the topography, okay, are there depression areas that often drown out, and is that just generally a poor part of the field, or is there something else going on? You can see in this picture that the blue is high ground, the red is low ground. So it's got a gentle slope, but there are some straight lines in there, especially on that north yard site. You can see a ridge down the middle of the picture. That's on the half mile. You can see a couple of ridges or fence rows running east-west in the northeast corner of this field, or the top right corner. So these are all important things that we can look at. And then when we run it through software, that's where we can start to really tease out those areas. So you can see in that top right corner there's a lot of man-made differences. Fence rows, paddock lines, was something pasture or grassland that it caught more erosion and therefore it's a little bit more elevated versus other areas that maybe got blown out. So these are all important clues to help assess what is going on. Another step we like to look at is what are the soil tests telling us. So in this particular case, if you've got a full composite of the field, ideally you want soil tests to start testing those different areas of the field differently. Looking at things like soil texture, pH, salinity, organic matter. If I look at salinity might be a big clue, but organic matter and carbonates can help indicate erosion. So higher carbonates, generally we've got more subsoil at the surface. We've lost more of that good high organic matter soil. So these are all different clues, high pH as well, that can help indicate those things, especially when you're contrasting or comparing a good area to a bad area. But all in all, we can have all of these discussions in the winter, we can get prepared, but the whole idea is to make a plan so that we can deal with this in season. So in season, there's a lot of different things we do. We mentioned zone sampling, so breaking the field off into different areas. I wouldn't do it based on topography on this particular field, but for sure based on the satellite imagery where they were seeing those really good productive rectangles versus the non-productive ones. So that would be step one for me. Another thing that you could look at, okay, here's the image that I'm talking about. Another thing to look at consider is grid sampling. Grid sampling is something for non-mobile nutrients. We can separate it into 2.5. This is 2.5 acre grid, but we can split it into a 5 acre grid. But that would give us, square by square what our nutrient levels are, so we can really start to tease out which nutrients maybe aren't as available to the plants. Soil samples tells you what's in the ground, but another important piece of the puzzle is tissue testing in season. So comparing, again, good areas and bad areas. It's really powerful when you can combine soil tests with tissue tests in season. That's how you properly use a tissue test. It's not just what's available to the plant, but what's actually making it into the plant. Other things to look at in season, NDVI, you can use drone mapping, plant counts. There's a lot of technology coming online now for evaluating plant stands using drones, using cameras that can really help paint a picture of what our emergence is like early on in the season. So these are all tools that we can use to help figure out what is wrong or what is going on some of these fields. So again, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this content, chances are you know other people that do. Please like, share, and subscribe. Check us out on the rest of our socials, and we'll catch you in the next video. Thanks.